Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we're going to have some fun here during this break before we get back to these regular season games on our All-Star break here. Taking a look at some title odds in these videos today, as well as those MVP odds as well that we'll have in a specific video for you there. This one, we are taking a look at the the Eastern Conference teams specifically, and what we think of each of them, some of the best bets we find for them in their futures, as well as the Western Conference in a different video that we have for you up today. So make sure you are liked and subscribe to that page, and as well as making sure you check out those odds the odds checker on thelines.com, which does have all of the different best bets available for you according to the juice you get on that money from the different odds makers available for you. So keep that updated for you and make sure you can just find those really easily. So Nate, let's go ahead and start with some of those title odds overall here, and then we'll get into the Eastern Conference teams specifically.
Yes, sir. Odds brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook here. The top tier, in my opinion, is the Suns Warriors, who are co-favorites right now at plus 425. The Nets have just slipped below them at plus 450 following a 11-game losing streak and that big trade. And the Bucks I also put in there at plus 700. Second tier is all Eastern Conference for me. Sixers plus 700, Heat plus 1,000, and the Red Hot Celtics at plus 2,500. And then in the third tier, most of the rest of the Western Conference contenders, Jazz, Grizzlies, Nuggets, Mavs, even the Lakers throw in there. And I throw the Bulls in there at plus 3,000. I think they're new money, not necessarily going to win it all, but we will address that soon. You got to start with the Nets, obviously, in the Eastern Conference. Had opened the season at plus 200, 225, the favorite to win it all, really right up until, despite this losing streak, up until the deadline, they were the favorite. As they continued to lose and as this trade actually went through, for people to know there will be no three-headed, unstoppable offensive monster now. James Harden is gone. Ben Simmons enters and could become an even better fit, an even better defensive player. But with Simmons, probably waiting till close to when Durant comes back, and Durant not coming back for maybe another 2 or 3 weeks, and Kyrie Irving only eligible right now to play 8 more games total, the Nets are almost certainly going to be in the play-in tournament at this point. And at plus 450 to win it all, plus 230 to win the tougher Eastern Conference, as you look at those tiers, there are more contenders in the East now. Let's not get caught up in the past here. The East is better. And the Nets just have a brutal schedule right out of the All-Star break. They're going to be scraping, maybe even fending off the Wizards or Knicks to hold a play-in tournament spot, you would think. So the question for you, Josh, is, with KD coming quickly off an injury here, with Ben Simmons having not played in years, are they going to be able to win quickly, play-ins, turn it around, and then beat one of the top seeds in the East to even get this finals run started?
No. No, I don't think they are. Look, no one wants to bet against Kevin Durant, but there's too much up in the air right now for this team. The Eastern Conference to me is a situation right now where there's some known commodities and there's a ton of unknown commodities, and the Nets are right at the top of the list of unknown commodities, followed closely by the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, they just made that trade. So it's not only the key factors here. Kyrie can't play in road games, as you mentioned. 8 of the remaining 23 he's going to play in. That's not good for them when they're going to be lacking scoring, until KD gets back, which, mentioned the middle of March. But Ben Simmons, Sen Bibbins, as we call him on this show, his availability as well is still super up in the air. So what are we talking about? Like, known commodities on the Brooklyn Nets right now are that, Seth Curry's underrated still, which is great. We'll keep taking his player props as they sit at like 15.5 this season. Andre Drummond is a very serviceable backup defender, center who's playing starter minutes at this point, but still, doing a decent job. But you don't want Andre Drummond on the floor for 30 plus minutes a game. He's going to be making 3 to 4 plays a game. If that you give him that much time, that make you go, what are you doing, Andre Drummond? But other than that, right? I mean, Joe Harris still hurt. So what are we talking about with this team? We're relying on a ton of unknown. And then, you look at KD coming back. I'm still worried about him getting injured again at this point, right? I mean, he's sixth in the league right now in terms of minutes a game that he's played for them. We know that he's on the court for the entirety of crunch time. And really the reason, his rotation has been all season, pretty consistent, but then he has to come in these random moments, come in earlier from his break on the bench than he might like, as the team, his plus minus and net rating and all of that is so high compared to, when on the court versus when he's off the court for the Nets that, that they can't really afford to have those bench minutes too often or too many of them rather, at this point. I mean, their bench will be deeper than it was, in my opinion. Obviously you get a couple extra guys for one in terms of James Harden, really. So, they still have that going for them. But as we talk about in the playoffs, once you get there, it's about your starters playing minutes. And we'll see how gassed KD is and how many games Kyrie can even play in before we start talking about this team as an actual title contender, right?
Yeah, and Joe Harris, so crucial to what they do. We just don't know when he's coming back. And it's just, chemistry, the wake of the Harden mess, how much it will wreak on their chemistry is to be determined. This season's sort of a wash with the way Kyrie's been dealing with these vaccine mandates. They might be lifted in time for him to play in the playoffs at home, but it's just so many unknowns that they're not a team you want to bet on when they're not even really getting much value at this point.
And that's what it comes down to, right? Is like plus 450 for all these unknowns is like, I'm kind of betting that things are going to actually fall differently than they are now, right? I need the mandate to change for Kyrie to play. I need KD to come back and play healthy. I need Ben Simmons, who hasn't played a game of basketball since the game where his coach told everybody that he didn't know if Ben Simmons was a championship point guard. There's more unknowns there than there is anywhere else, which kind of brings you to the Bucks, because I think they are the most known commodity. I think the fact that there's so much unknown around the league is the reason you hear pundits saying Bucks Suns again, because I don't know what else to say. And these are the two teams that I've seen do it before. And this is one of the situations where last year everybody was saying no Bucks, no Suns, because we had never seen either of them do it before. And we all love to just say what has happened in the past is what's going to happen again, because we've seen it happen. But the problem with the Bucks right now is hardest strength of schedule remaining. They had a tough time, in the first half of the season with one of the easiest strength of schedule up to this point. And so, you really worry about how are they going to maintain what they're doing again, now that they're playing against teams that, are I don't know about better than them, but are at least as good as them, right?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to take the lazy route here and predict a Bucks Suns finals in any means. I think the Bucks could go down to either the Sixers, Heat, or Celtics. I would say in my mind, it's a 3-team merry-go-round for which of those teams will be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and it's going to shake down to the matchups. But all three of those teams, I mean, the Sixers just proved they can beat the Bucks despite a near triple-double from Giannis, and they haven't even introduced Harden, who I think, with all the negative press surrounding him, especially his playoff performance, is going to come out and show some things for sure. I would just move off the Bucks just due to general fatigue, in the sense that something's been funky about them all year. Whether Giannis or Drew is out, it doesn't seem right. And I think Giannis, while he's improved a lot of aspects of his game, he's still not kind of the all around star you need to cruise through this gauntlet now that they have in the East. When there's a few teams that I mentioned there that can actually defend him very well. The Heat now adding PJ Tucker, the Celtics, the best defensive team in modern history right now. I think that the Bucks are not going to make it this time. And the Sixers are interesting at the exact same odds, in the sense that as long as Embiid's upright, as long as James Harden is giving a full effort, they're extremely dangerous.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, so you mentioned the Bucks, the 3 teams that you think it's a merry-go-round for the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, you mentioned the Bucks, and then you mentioned the Celtics, right? And then who's that third team? I think you said the Nets,
right? For which Heat, Celtics, Sixers are going to knock off those consensus favorites.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, more because I want to make sure that we threw the Heat in there. I don't think I heard them, but yeah, I think just finishing the point about Milwaukee. I mean, look, I do think Giannis found something in last year's playoffs. We all know what he's going to need to make those free throws as well for them to be dangerous. But I do think he found a way to be effective, especially with Drew Holiday playing around him. And to me, Chris Middleton being the third banana, even though he did take over a finals game, did Chris Middleton and win that? I believe it was Game 5 or 6 for them for the Bucks. I still think it's really about, Giannis being there and Drew being that solid point guard that can play off of him well enough to get him into his spots, right? And not just rely on Giannis to take three guys on by getting ahead of steam at the 3-point line, as he's done in prior playoffs. But I also think, to your point, that there's too much right now in terms of what we've seen this season that doesn't make us feel good about even the Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton lineup. When the three of them are on the floor, they have a very obviously incredible plus minus. And then they, in the games that they play, they're 24-7 versus, much closer to 500 when they don't. But at the same time, I think that there is enough around the Eastern Conference right now that it doesn't feel like it's the exact moment in time or the year for the Bucks. I do like what they did in terms of picking up certain guys, getting bigger at the trade deadline. But I do think they also need another guard right now outside of Drew that can sort of play that role for them. Whereas I think that there are a few other players now on the Sixers that were, like, to your point, that it's another unknown in terms of Philly, but I think that the guys that they have in the lineup that they put around Embiid and Harden even is going to be, it's a lot. It's a lot to be able to sort of not necessarily stifle what the Bucks are doing, but at the end of the day, you have Joel down there, and you feel a little bit better about being able to defend a guy like Giannis.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely want to talk more about the Sixers and their chances here without seeing Harden on the floor. I do think they still have a great chance to win the Eastern Conference. I think that there is too often, like you talk about, that redactive narrative that, oh, well, we haven't seen it from James Harden before, so therefore he will never lead a team to the finals. Well, he hears that too. If Embiid's upright, again, yeah, I actually think they should be the favorite here in the East. They're the best team on paper with those two guys and with the right guys around them. But in terms of finding value to bet here, I mean, we do want to talk about Miami a little bit. They are the number one seed right now, but I don't see a lot of value betting on them. The Celtics are really what we have to spend some time on here. We're looking at these futures. First of all, they're the best team in the league over the last 14 games. A 97 defensive rating, which is nearly 10 points better than the next best team in the NBA. Their net rating is 10 points better than the Suns in that span. With Derek White on the floor in clutch time, they are the best team by far. And it's a large enough sample size to say it's not that driven by the schedule or not that much of a fluke. It is actually this team reaching its defensive potential. Defense wins in the playoffs. Defense will win down the stretch in this regular season. And for the Celtics to win 13 of their last 22 games, to go over 46.5 wins, love that bet. I would consider them catching the Sixers for plus 340, but why bet on that when you can bet on the exact seeding at DraftKings? You can get them plus 3,500 to get the 1 seed, or 1,600 for the 2, or 1,400 for the 3. Now, if you bet $100 on all 3 of those things and the Celtics hit one of them, you're basically guaranteed 400% profit, I believe. You crunch those numbers a little bit more, but I do think they're going to continue winning here. They don't have the toughest schedule. They don't have the easiest schedule, but they're just on fire right now with Rob Williams playing the way he is on both ends. He actually is in the top 5 at offensive and defensive rating right now. I've been a detractor of the Celtics all season in terms of taking them as favorites, taking them against the spread, expecting them to beat teams they're expected to beat. So I'm not really here to say that I expect them to rally through the playoffs, but I do expect them to continue to find the success to end the regular season, to build on more success as these young guys become leaders. To me, they're kind of like the Grizzlies in the East. They're going to have a strong finish. They're going to make some noise in the playoffs, maybe knock off a contender, but they're not yet ready to win a title at all. But you can still get some great value in terms of how they would finish this season.
Yeah, how they finish the season. I think as far as also going to the conference finals, I think they're right to do that. I actually think they're right now my favorites because of the fact that in terms of what we know, the Bucks, the Heat, and the Celtics. To be honest, I mean, I know the Bucks we talked about a minute ago and have that super strong strength of schedule. The Celtics not quite as much, but I think that the known commodity of what they're doing now, especially that Derek White addition, and by the way, the subtraction of Dennis Schroeder, who had some really, really bad numbers, especially when he was on the court with both Tatum and Brown. Really not a guy that was helping them off ball in any way. But look, Marcus Smart and Derek White leading the defense has made it even more insanely good. You mentioned Robert Williams. Yeah, I think all of that. While you were talking, I'm sorry, I have to be honest. I went ahead and just put some money down on the over under of their total wins at 46.5, 13-9, and you win your money there. I mean, they're not losing that many games so far in the last month and a half at all. So you feel pretty good about it in 22 games. Them hitting that stuff. They've got really their defensive numbers at home as well is something I love when you consider what they're going to be able to do in the playoffs as they're just completely shutting down teams at home. You mentioned that defensive rating at about 97. I believe at home it's slightly better than that even. So looking at them to win the Eastern Conference plus 1100, I don't love it, but look, like I said, I think that one of the three teams coming out of the East is the Heat and the Celtics or the Bucks right now. And so if you want to hit the division winner bet at plus 340 to overtake the 76ers, I think I like the Celtics more because I know what I'm going to be getting from them, unless everything just falls apart and completely turns around the way that it was earlier, which to me, I don't know how that would happen. I think that they've turned that corner, especially, Udoka and everything that he's been able to grow as a coach as well. It's too bad that they just came out so soft and inconsistent because I think he would be way up there for coach of the year if it just really started once they started winning games and figured out that defense. And look, Brad Stevens as well figured things out, realizing, okay, I made a mistake here. I need to move things around and I actually need to get Daniel Tice back, because I need another backup center who can play down low a little bit more now that Papa Al is a little bit slower of foot. So, the last two teams that we gotta mention here, Nate, just moving on from the C's real quick, is the Heat and the Bulls. I think, just starting with the Heat real quick, it's not fair that we're not talking about them enough. I think we're all a little bit worried between Hero and Jimmy that maybe there's some, injury issues. Bam's missed a bunch of games this season, but when they've got all those guys, I mean, we said it from the jump that this is one of the best defensive teams in recent history when between Bam, Jimmy, and Kyle Lowry are all on the floor at the same time, right? I mean, if you're talking about PJ Tucker, the addition there as well, it feels like defensively this team is ready for the playoffs. Was made for it in a 7-game series.
Yeah, they're a shark, right? I mean, they're just going to jump up and knock off one of these teams that you might think is going to win it all. And they're not a team that I want to bet on themselves to win it all, though. They're just so tough, so gritty, but they haven't had all 5 of those key guys you mentioned on the floor for hardly more than 20 minutes all season. There might be some issues getting on the same page at that point. Might be some issues scoring in crunch time. I mean, they're pretty similar to how the Mavericks play on the defensive side of the ball, slow pace, shutting down the opponent, but a little more balanced offensively, but you're still kind of depending on Tyler Hero to have the offensive performance he did in the bubble to almost be the primary playmaker. Kyle Lowry at this stage in his career, not necessarily going to initiate your offense as much, especially against some of the rangy defensive teams we mentioned in this conference. But yeah, the Heat for me are a team to watch out and lurking in terms of taking out your team that you picked, but not a team that I would pick. The Bulls, haven't been able to play defense without their 2 guards here, Caruso and Lonzo Ball. DeMar DeRozan is definitely a guy to think about in the MVP race coming on late, but I don't think in the playoffs that they're going to be able to quite put it all together like this in 1 year. Still relatively new to them. The one thing that is interesting about betting is that they're still plus 170 to win their division, and they're 2.5 games ahead of the Bucks.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. That one I love. I get 2.5 games, just in hand that they're ahead of the Bucks. The Bucks do have the hardest strength of schedule left. The Bulls do have, I believe, the second hardest strength of schedule left. So it's not like they've got an easy road either, beating a bunch of cupcakes. But, I think that they do still have some games against some teams. Well, here's the thing. The other thing about the Bulls, too, is even their games that you look at in terms of easiest opponents based on their opponent's current schedule or record, you're talking about the Kings and the Pellies and the Hawks, all teams that have, are under 500, but all teams that are on the uptick for sure. Even the Hawks are a team that I would consider definitely taking their wins. I love the fact that that I think they're a team that's back on the rise. They're back to being healthy as well at 41.5 wins, meaning they would need to go 13-9 as well in their last 22, and they've got the seventh easiest strength of schedule left due to the Hawks. So just looking at who teams have left and how they've played against good and bad teams so far, I still like the Bulls at plus 170. Getting those games from the Bucks, who also, like we said, have that super hard strength of schedule. I do think the Bulls are going to at some point, before long, get Lonzo and Caruso back before the regular season ends, enough to really get them into playoff form, hopefully with that defense. I like the bets here for me. I like that the Bulls to win that conference plus money with that lead already, and then Zach LaVine coming back. We know what happens when he and DD are on the court at the very least. They're one of them, with at least both of them on the floor. We're talking a top 4 or 5 seed easy for the Bulls. You put both those guys back on the court for them. I think they could, if they came back now, I think it would be wise to bet on them to sneak into, maintaining that in the top 3 seed there. But the other bet there for me also, like I said, the Hawks, not really sure if they're going to be able to just pull off another, really almost miraculous sort of playoff run. But I do like their win total remaining, as I think they're a team that's turned around as they did last season at the correct moment in time. So that is all the time we have on the Eastern Conference as well, Nate. Make sure you guys are liked and subscribed to that page and check out the Western Conference teams that we talk about there, as well as this MVP title, MVP odds that we have up for you as well. Stay on thelines.com, as well as we have those updated odds all over the place for you guys from each odd maker around, so you can find the best place to get the most juice back on your money. So until we see y'all next, happy betting.